Welcome to the Multifamily Zone, where business meets family. We explore what the entrepreneur life looks like from the family perspective. Now here are your hosts, Julia and Gino Barbaro.
Hey everyone, this is Julia Barbaro, host of the Multifamily Zone podcast. I am here with the co-founder of Jake and Gino, my husband and co-host, Gino Barbaro. Gino, how are you?
Good, Julia. How you doing?
I'm good.
So what do we have on tap today?
I'll let you lead. This is your favorite topic.
My favorite topic is because something that when I went through life, I had all of these blocks, but I didn't know what they were. I was blaming everything but myself. Once I ultimately took responsibility and I understood what these blocks were, I was able to tackle them. Basically, we're going to be talking about the energy blocks that I learned in IPEC. There's basically 4 energy blocks. We call them the GAIL, G-A-I-L. Now, what is an energy block? An energy block is anything, whether it's an internal or external, that blocks you or restricts you. Unfortunately, the majority of the energy blocks are internal. It's there in your mind, they're your thoughts. As Henry Ford said, if you think you can do it, then you can do it. If you think you can't, then you can't. And I know a lot of people struggle with that and they make excuses. And obviously there's certain things, as my wife said, I'm never going to play in the NBA. It's just a reality. Mm-hmm. So I'm talking more about things in our lives, whether we want to become financially free, whether we want to raise great children, whether we want to have a great relationship. Those are a lot of things that we can do. But if we look at how we're coming to life and what we're processing through our mind, a lot of those energy blocks are within us, are holding us back. The external ones, for me, I'll give you an example. Picture back in 2008, the economy was going sideways. The Great Recession was upon us. And I go ahead and I go and blame the current president. And I blame the current economy for what's going on. That's my problem. When in reality, looking back at it, that wasn't my problem because there were a lot of other people out there making millions and millions of dollars. I wasn't one of them. So I was blaming my external circumstances for my problem. That was an energy block. That was part of a limiting belief that I had. We're going to go through. That was part of the assumptions that I had that I was going through. Once I realized that, what did I need to do to change those situations? I needed to do 2 things: take responsibility, become educated. Those are the 2 things that I needed to do.
Yeah, Gino, that's excellent. And it reminded me a little bit when you were talking about, I always talk about marriage and family. Usually you see a couple and you assume that they grew up in a with a father and a mother and for the perfect family at home, and they learned from that. Well, I actually grew up single with a single mother. I had no couples in my life that I'm like, wow, I really want that. I really want that marriage. But for some reason, I had this desire to be married and with children. And I saw it as so good and I wanted that. And so I have it because it's an effort, and every day is an effort, and I chose it. And that's so important because a lot of us use that. I could never get married. I didn't have, a good upbringing with a positive role model and all that. You are the role model. We can be the role model. So that's something that we can decide.
So let's tackle the first energy block. It's the limiting belief. Now, I want everyone to stop out there and just think for a second. What limiting beliefs do you have? Maybe I can give a description or definition of what. For me, basically, a limiting belief is anything that in your mind that limits you. And I've told this story several times. My wife's going to remind me that I've told it a couple of times, but there's the story of Roger Bannister running the 4-minute mile. I mean, that is the prototypical limiting belief. Back in the 1950s, nobody thought you could run a 4-minute mile. They thought your heart would explode. They thought something would happen. You just could not physically run one. Well, Roger Bannister breaks the 4-minute mile, breaks that limiting belief. And what happens once you shatter a limiting belief, the sky's the limit. And then a couple of weeks after that, more people are running this 4-minute mile. So for me, my limiting belief was when I was in the restaurant business, I had a lot of them. Let's go into employees. I couldn't hire the right employees. That was my limiting belief. Every employee that I got, I just couldn't find one. Now with the Jake and Gino brand, it wasn't the employees, it was me. I shattered that limiting belief because now I know how to hire. I've created a culture. I've created core values that we hire off of. So think about your mission statement, your core values. And now that limiting belief that I have no more is, it's not that the employees are bad, it's I'm maybe hiring the wrong ones, or I'm putting them in the wrong seats. So that limiting belief for me is shattered. I know I can hire great people. I have great people. My other limiting belief when I was starting out in real estate is money doesn't grow on trees, and it takes money to make money. Now, those were both shattered because I know money doesn't literally grow on trees, but there's so much currency and money floating around in the economy. It's ridiculous. Money is following assets, and I know it's out there. And I've been able to raise over $10 million with the Rand Partners brand. Shout out to Dylan. Shout out to Jake. Shout out to Mike Tararella for making that happen. But we were able to raise that in a year's worth of time. If you'd have told me that 5 years ago, I would have thought you're crazy. That limiting belief for me is shattered. The other one is it takes money to make money. It doesn't take money to make money. It takes somebody's money. It doesn't have to be mine. It can be somebody else's money. So, and also with lending from the banks and the refinance and roll, where we've been able to refinance a lot of the money. 5 or 6 years ago, I couldn't conceive of that concept of where am I going to get the money for the next deal. I just kept plugging away and I kept learning, and I didn't let that limiting belief hold me back.
Yeah, there's a sentence that my husband absolutely loves, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, "What we allow in our minds will show up in our actions." And it's so true, because we always say, "I can't do it," or "I can't do it right now. I don't have time. I can't do it." And we have to change that to, I can do it. How can I do it? Who can help me with it? There's so many other questions we can ask ourselves instead of holding on to, "I can't, it's not the right time," because we always use that as an excuse because we don't want it. It's too difficult, or just the thought of what we're trying to accomplish is too overwhelming. And so we avoid it by making that excuse is "I can't." And that's your limiting belief. Is that right?
Yes.
Am I getting this?
I have so many amazing Jake and Gino students out there who are employed by unions, by teachers, Lisa Ward. I have Neil out there. I have so many of them. And I think one of the limiting beliefs is I can't leave my job because of my pension. Now, in a lot of instances, it's true. And I had the same feeling when I was at the restaurant. I can't leave the restaurant because that's my bread and butter. That's where I'm making my money. Now, I don't say you have to leave tomorrow or next year, but if you have that thought in your mind, and if I had that thought in my mind that I couldn't leave the restaurant, I'm not going to take the appropriate actions to do that. Now, Neil and Lisa and the rest of the Jake and Gino community, who's part of the community, they are taking the proper actions just by joining the community, by getting involved in networking, by getting involved by going to the boot camps, by getting involved by doing deals. So it doesn't happen overnight, but as you can see, that limiting belief is strong, because if you think you can't leave your corporate job for your pension because that's your golden handcuffs, what actions are you going to take to go after your dream? They're going to be limited because you're like, I can't leave my job. So what's the sense of me going and calling a broker? What's the sense of me going to a networking event? Because I can't leave my job for another 5 years. So it's really powerful that you actually stop and look at your thoughts and diagnose your thoughts, because I did that with the restaurant. I got to a point after doing it for 20 years, it's in my DNA. It's part of my physiology every day. I just got so fed up that I knew I wanted change. And one of the reasons why this change came about was because of life coaching, because of my ability to see and assess my thoughts and become aware of how I could tackle these energy blocks.
Yeah, and when we have that thought in our mind where I can't do it, and of course we're talking about in reason, like Gino had said before. What if we write out a plan? What if we write out a plan of how can I take that first step? Whatever it is I can't do, yes, you can do it. How can I do it? And who can help me with it? Whether it's, your husband here, one of your kids, if they're older, they want to, hold you accountable. There's always someone in our life that is super wise, super encouraging, that we have to look out for. Are we holding on to the people that are bringing us down and you can't do that? Are they telling you we can't do that? Because that's important to kind of pay attention to. So let's be aware of who we're telling our ideas to and who's holding us accountable, and kind of hold on to those people.
Julie makes an excellent point, and it's really has a lot to do with community. And I was fortunate when I started my journey with multifamily that I had Jake as an accountability partner / partner. If I didn't have him, would I have put offers in on deals? Would I have written our second book, Honeybee? Would I have written our first book? Would I have started the Jake and Gino community? I don't know the answer to those questions. All I know is that once I created the mastermind of people that I wanted to surround myself with, it really propelled me. And I think the Jake and Gino community has done that to a lot of students, and it's hard to quantify. It's not just the education. It's just starting to identify as a multifamily investor. It's starting to identify as somebody who wants more, somebody who wants to grow. You have to have that growth mindset in life, because if you're not growing, you're dying.
I just want to add this because it's really important. I was thinking about it recently, that when Jake and Gino started out, I saw them working together, and they had their full-time jobs, and they would come home from work and they would work on the computer. They would, be on the computer together. And one of the reasons why I knew that they were going to succeed is because they never complained. They never said, we can't do this. They held each other accountable, and they just did it. If they didn't know what to do, they'd find someone to do it, and they would learn from that. And they never made excuses.
And it's funny that she says that. Jake just sent something over from Napoleon Hill. We're having a little struggle in the business. It's just like daily things. And I forget what the quote from Napoleon Hill is, but it basically says, you're not failing. It's just the next step to success. You have to commit and figure it out.
Right.
And most of us, when we go into real estate, it took us 18 months to find our first deal. That was a limiting belief then, and it is now. We can't find a deal. There's no deals out there. If you have that limiting belief, guess what? You're not going to call the brokers. You're not going to go out there and raise money. You're not going to go out there and partner with people. So you're not going to find a deal. Is it harder to find deals today? Absolutely. But when we started, it still took us 18 months to find our first deal. I just knew what I wanted. I had the clarity on, I want to do this. So we spent a lot of time on limiting beliefs, because I think that's the most prevalent one. I think it's the least strongest one of the energy blocks, because once you shatter the limiting belief, the sky's the limit. I mean, now I know I can raise money. Now I know money does grow on trees because it's out there and we've been able to raise it. I know a lot of these things. So those limiting beliefs are not holding me back.
Okay, Gino, what's the next one?
The next one is interpretations. Julia has a great story on interpretations, but let me at least give you an idea of what an interpretation is, because this is really powerful. We all interpret things in life differently. My wife looks at something and interprets it differently than I do. You send an email to somebody, you call somebody up on the phone, you call that broker, and you say, Mr. Broker, I'm leaving you a message. Call me back when you got time. 2 days passes and that broker never calls you back. I have a perfect example. I send out an email to somebody on LinkedIn. I wanted to get them on my podcast. They didn't call me back after 2 days. I got frustrated. Well, why aren't they calling me back? I'm interpreting it in one way. Well, maybe the reality is that they never got the message. They're just overwhelmed. They're on vacation. They got off the platform. There can be so many different ways. So to tackle an interpretation is tackle it head on. Call the person, email the person, text the person, try to find out what's going on. Don't take an interpretation, because perception does become reality. How you're perceiving it becomes your reality, how you're looking at it. So it's always great to step back, assess how you're thinking, be aware of your thoughts, and try to figure out not how you're interpreting, but what the reality is behind this situation.
Yeah. So my story about this is, when I first thought of becoming a life coach, I was so excited, and it was just me. I looking on computer and I'm like, wow, I could do this online. I really found it very exciting, and I wanted to help people. And so I had texted Gino. I had gone for a walk, and this is the reason why I started it, was because my kids got a little older and I had that freedom, right? So I didn't have any more babies at home, and I could actually do something other than them.
George Michael, freedom.
That's right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So here I was on a walk by myself to the beach. It was beautiful, and I was so excited. And I had sent a text. So here I am texting Gino. I said, I'm thinking, what do you think if I become a life coach? Send. And I'm waiting. And now I know he has his phone all the time. So I'm like, why isn't he responding? He's not responding. And so there I am. All these thoughts were coming into my head. He's gonna think this is a dumb idea. Like he's telling me that I'm not gonna be good at it. And so here I am actually thinking that I know what he's thinking. And I actually decided to not do it. Within 3 minutes, I had changed my mind. I had no excitement. I'm like, wow, I'd be really bad at it. And that's what he thinks. So forget it. I'm not doing it. And about 5 minutes later, he had called me about something unrelated, and he had a question for me. And in the middle of that conversation, I said, did you get my text? And he said, hold on. And he looked down at his phone. He's like, oh, you want to be a life coach? Yeah, I think that's great. You'll be really good at it. And I'm like, oh, I just almost completely sabotaged my whole dream and my excitement and all that because of this assumption that I was making. Interpretation. And I thought, my gosh, what a good lesson. What a good lesson for all of us, because I could have just called him and asked him, or I could have assumed that he maybe didn't even see the text yet. Why don't we wait and ask the person and clarify before we jump to conclusions?
And that's important because her interpretation of me having the phone all the time is also incorrect, because I go on walks all the time with the kids. I go on the walks. I never bring my phone with me, and I have my phone in my drawer when I'm blocking time out to do work.
You were working.
Yes, but I block the time out and I'll put it in the thing and I'll have it on silent, right, and it won't go. So even her interpretation of her thinking that I have the phone all the time, she just corrected herself again, because I don't have it all the time. So that's crazy what your mind does to you now that you can think of it. So for me, the big lesson is, when you're trying to create a relationship with somebody, really know what's going on. Don't assume things. She said, don't interpret with a situation. And it's important, even with an employee. Don't make that interpretation when you make an offer. You don't know what they're thinking when you're going out and you're trying to buy a deal from somebody and you're offering a price. Right. Don't interpret that them saying no because the price is too low. Maybe they need more assurance that you're going to buy the deal. Maybe the price doesn't work. Maybe they want somebody who's more secure and they just want to make sure that the deal is closed. Check out the interpretations. Make sure that you have enough information before you make that interpretation, and just go ahead and ask the person, what's wrong with my offer? Why haven't you called me back?
Right.
That's how I would tackle the interpretation.
Yeah. And we get caught up in this too, because then I could have used that as, my husband doesn't think I'm going to be good, and now I'm blaming him.
Yes.
And we get on that blame game with everyone we know, because we're holding ourselves back, but it's easier to blame someone else than to take responsibility.
Self-sabotage. My wife could have self-sabotaged herself, turned around, blamed me.
Right.
I could have had a crappy day
and
without
he could
even
have never
doing
known,
anything.
Right? You could have never known. I could have just not done it and not talked about it with you, and went on with life and never have done it. And how horrible that would be.
That's right.
So that's something important that we have to think about.
The third one is the assumption. So everyone write it down. The first one is limiting belief. The second one is the interpretation. The third one is the assumption. Now, an assumption is really strong, because an assumption, a limiting belief, is something that may or may not have happened to you in your life. But an assumption is something that's happened to you in your life. You've gotten married. All of a sudden, you've gotten divorced. Wow. What happens going forward? You can assume every time you get into a relationship, that relationship is really going to be difficult. You assume that you have a child who's born. Child rearing is going to be really difficult going forward because you've had a problem child as your first child. I can even take it into the business perspective. When I did my first deal in mobile home parks, I could have said to myself, wow, that first deal was not a good deal. I lost a lot of money. Real estate is risky. I can make those assumptions. What I want you to do is really take a step back, assess the situation. Was the real estate deal risky, or was it risky because I was an idiot and I didn't do my due diligence? I was not educated. I didn't know what I was doing. Maybe that's the point. Now, if I assume that it was risky, then I would not continue on the journey of getting educated and wanting to do more. I just knew what my why was. So I just fought through it, and I realized, you know what? It's not the real estate. It's not the person who I invested with. It was me. So that assumption, if it holds on to you and you assume that, guess what? Your next relationship is going to be terrible. Your next partnership is going to be terrible. The way you raise your next child, if you have your next child, is terrible because you're assuming the first one's hard. Well, this next one's got to be just as hard. So, I challenge you all out there. What assumptions have you made in life? And if they come true, maybe they've come true because it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy that real estate's risky. I lost money in my first deal. Well, I'm going to lose money going forward. The partnership one is really powerful because I still have made mistakes with partnerships. I could have assumed that they were all terrible or all great, but really, when it comes down to partnerships, it's really for me to learn how to deal with value-based decision-making. It really deals with the ethical aspect of the partner, how the partner works. So how I choose the partner, don't assume that just because I had a bad partnership 6 months ago, the next one's going to be bad. It's all about how you perceive it and how you prepare yourself for that next partnership.
Yeah. So that reminds me of just taking responsibility. And again, it kind of touches on the blaming, for if you are getting into partnership with someone, or if you are looking for a spouse, you know what I mean? If you're looking for a relationship and the one previous did not work out, maybe you had issues. And we always hold on to those. We hold on to those bad experiences. But why not remember those bad experiences and learn from them? Say, I don't want this. I'm going to change this, this, and this. And I'm going to move forward with all the good things that I learned. And we're, in a business partner, we're talking about this recently. We had a lesson, what's it called? A webinar. We're talking about just finding that partner. What kind of partner do we want? And that's the question that we have to ask, because if we're not in line with their values, their way of working, it's not going to work out. So let's start being responsible with who we hang out with, who our partners are, what kind of relationship we want.
So I also challenge everyone out there, look at the last problem that you've had and take a look and see if you can find the opportunity within it, because that's really difficult. When you're going through something, it's really, really hard. If you can't do that right now, think of a problem or an opportunity that you had a few years ago, a few months ago. For me, I can think of a problem at the restaurant. The reason why I got out of the restaurant, we were getting audited. I looked at that as a problem when I went through it. I was going through it. It was so difficult for me. I couldn't see past the weeds. But now that I look back at it, that was probably one of the best opportunities in my life, because it actually gave me the impetus to get out of the restaurant and start educating myself and get into multifamily. So looking back at it, it was a huge opportunity for me. So as you're going through life, a lot of problems are going to come up. How can you see the opportunity out of those problems? Don't assume the worst. Try to see if you can find an opportunity from that problem.
Yeah, every situation we are in, there's an opportunity for growth. And if we're, like I said before, if we're holding on to the negative things that happened, that's all we're going to get out of it. And Gino talks about the restaurant all the time, how terrible it was. I remember all the good parts of it. So I have to tell you that for me, it was a different experience. I know I wasn't in the kitchen. I know I wasn't.
It was not terrible. There were aspects of it that were terrible.
Yeah.
So I just remember that was the pain point for me that I had to figure out. And that's what stuck with me. And I was a responsible person. So you need to be responsible on taking action. I could have been the victim.
Right.
We've gone through the 7 levels of energy, right? Victim is the lowest catabolic level. I could have been the victim and said, woe is me. Well, you know what? A lot of people get audited. A lot of people have problems in their businesses. I could have said, you know what? Why is this always happening to me? And I could have been paralyzed with fear. I could have done nothing and been stuck in that situation. Fortunately for me, I was just motivated enough to take responsibility and to take action.
Right. So, Gino, the next one is the Gremlin.
My wife doesn't like the name of this one, but I like the Gremlin because it's your little inner voice, your little inner critic. And think of the Gremlin as an ugly little creature, and that's what's going on in your mind. And we all have that. Take a look at what's going on with Instagram and Facebook. Everyone seems as if they're having this wonderful life. We all have challenges. We all have problems. The Gremlin holds a lot of people back. Am I too fat? Am I too skinny? Am I too ugly? Am I too stupid? Flesh out what you think your Gremlin is, that little inner voice that you constantly hear. Are you overanalyzing something? Are you afraid of failure? Are you afraid of looking silly in front of people? Are you afraid of overspending on a product and you don't want to? What's always holding you back? For me, my Gremlin was when I was at the restaurant, it was difficult because when I had that chef coat on, I always thought to myself, I'm not smart enough to deal with business people. I have a chef coat. I'm a pizza guy. Who wants to deal with me? I'm not smart enough to deal with that. The only way I shattered that Gremlin was I had enough motivation to get out of my situation. I hated my situation that much towards the end that I needed to learn. I wanted to learn. So we all have to figure out what our Gremlin is and challenge that Gremlin and attack that Gremlin. And that's why we talked earlier in the show about surrounding yourself with like-minded people, positive people. Listen to those positive images. I always listen to Jim Rome. I always listen to Zig Ziglar. I always listen to Napoleon Hill. I always listen to Tony Robbins. The list goes on and on. I always had T. Harv Eker. All those powerful gurus in my car, listening to them, listening to those messages, listening to their struggles and listening to their challenges, and knowing that if they can do it, it always propelled me to think that I can do it. So that negative energy, shut the TV off. Don't listen to those negative ads, those negative commercials, that negative news media out there. Put positive images and positive voices into your mind and surround yourself with like-minded people.
Well, you mentioned a lot of good people, but my suggestion would be, look around you and see the people in front of you, because a lot of them we kind of overlook. And those are the people that we could probably embrace and say, you know what, this person is very positive and I want to be around that person more. Choose your friends wisely, and if you're in your family and everyone around you is a negative one, maybe you can start being the positive one. Maybe you can make a difference in people. Maybe you can lift them up and say, you know what, I'm encouraging you to do this and the other thing because you'll be really good at it. Maybe they need you. And that could kind of, spread into the family, because sometimes we're always looking for someone else to bring us up when we're that person. And we blame other people all the time. And that's usually the thing that holds us back the most. Is it's so easy to blame everyone. I'm the way I am because my mom raised me. Well, that's not right. I'm the way I am. I'm an adult and I could change, and I have the freedom to decide and make choices according to my thoughts. I could decide that, and I don't want to blame anyone else anymore. I want to be responsible. And that's a decision that we have to make and we want to make. If we want to step away from our past and move on to our future, let's decide to be responsible and start making better choices.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors.
Hey, Jake Stenziano and Gino Barbaro here. Are you in a job that's soul-sucking? Are you looking to create more abundance for you and your family? We've been there before. We've, been in those types of positions, those W-2 jobs that are just draining us of the greater abundance that we know is out there.
Now, Jake and I came together in 2013. We started buying multifamily properties, and in 2015, we launched our first book. We called it Wheelbarrow Profits. That was the buy right, manage right, finance right, the 3-step proprietary framework that Jake and I teach. And you know what? I thought I was done writing books, but my boy over here pulled me in and says, nope. Came out with the Honeybee. Now, this Honeybee talks all about creating complementary streams of revenue. Now, what do I mean by that? We created a property management company. We created a syndication company. We created the Jake and Gino education company. We've created a capital company that does mortgages. Now, all of these are complementary from those initial investments. Now, the Wheelbarrow Profits book is the how-to book. This is the why and the complementary streams and really adding wealth and legacy to your life.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic run for us in multifamily, and it's created a life of abundance. If you want to learn how to create multiple streams of revenue in whatever business you're in, these life lessons can be applied to many businesses. Click the link down below and pick yourself up a copy.
Julia, I want to wrap up the show by just listing out the 4 energy blocks again. I want everyone to take a few minutes after the show is over to write down what your 4 energy blocks are, and write down bits and pieces of those and how you're going to attack those. The first one is the limiting belief. We all have limiting beliefs out there. Those are just beliefs that are holding us back. You have to, flush them out. The second one is the interpretation. What's going on in your life that you're interpreting? I love that broker call. When you call a broker up and they don't call you back, that's a big interpretation, even for us when we're calling brokers. Well, he doesn't like my offer. He doesn't like my call. Don't interpret things. Make sure you understand what the situation really is. The next one is the assumption. Assumption is really powerful. What are you assuming in your life that's happened to you in the past that you think is going to be a recurring theme, even with failure? Well, I failed 6 months ago on this project. I failed at starting a business. Starting a business is really hard. I mean, most businesses fail on their first attempt because it's a really challenging thing. It took me a long time to figure out how to do the Jake and Gino brand model education because it was something that I'd never done before. I was able to partner with Jake, and I was able to have other entities that I learned through. So don't assume that just because you failed on something, you're going to fail going forward. And the last one is the Gremlin. What is that inner critic? What are you hearing in your inner voice all the time that's holding you back? That internal block that's holding you back from taking a step forward.
I just want to add something because this is important. I remember when I had first moved here to Florida with you and the kids, I joined this women's group. And it was very unusual for me because I wasn't comfortable in that situation. But this woman got up, she hosted the night, and she told this really detailed, very emotional story. And I was like, wow, this woman is incredible. And I went home that night and I'm like, I want to send her an email, but she probably received so many emails. She's probably overwhelmed with them, and she'll probably overlook it and think, well, another person's emailing me, whatever. And I sat there in front of the computer for like a half an hour thinking all these things, and I sent it. And it was, I just wanted to thank her for sharing her story. And she responded within 30 minutes. And she's like, I just want to thank you. She's like, No one sent me an email. You're the only one. And I thought, oh my gosh, well, that just shattered my thoughts, because I assumed that everyone was sending this. And I just want to tell you all out there, every time Gino receives a message from you, he actually shares it with me and he tells me about it. So thank you all for just letting us know, letting my husband know, and Jake, that they're making a difference in your life, and know that every time you reach out to them, that they really appreciate it. And I just encourage that more.
Well, that's the only way that we learn. If we don't get any feedback from anybody, if we don't know what we're doing right or we're doing wrong, we can't continue to do it. And I always tell the education students, if you have any questions, there's no such thing as a dumb question, because I love to create content. When you're first starting out, you don't know what you don't know. So I always want feedback. Feedback is great. It's hard. Criticism can be hard or stinging. Well, Gino, you sound terrible on the mic. Or Gino, what the heck are you talking about? That's fine. That's the only way I'm going to learn. So if I can analyze it, and I can make that assumption that I sounded bad 6 months ago and I'm not going to do a podcast, and that could have really held me back because I look stupid on camera. I speak too fast. I can assume all those things. That could have held me back, and it didn't hold me back because I just wanted to do it. So that was my assumption when I first started the podcast years ago.
So the question is, what are you willing to do differently in order to experience something different? And that's something that you could think about.
Let me say that really slow. What are you willing to do differently in order to experience something different? We'll leave you with that. That was a powerful statement. We have the Honeybee book out right now. It is in Kindle, 99 cents. If anyone out there leaves a review, buys it and leaves a review, email me at gino@jakeandgino.com, and I will send you out a signed copy of the Honeybee to your house. So we'd love that support. It's a great book. It's about multifaceted, multifamily, about building multiple streams of revenue, and it's a great story. It's written in a business parable, so it's very easy to understand. My wife even liked it.
I liked it.
So if she liked it, I guarantee you guys will like it, because she hates real estate. So it was built in parable form.
I don't hate it. Just not interested.
See, I'm assuming she doesn't hate it, but see, I'm interpreting.
I'm learning though.
Yes.
Strangely.
Well, we just want to thank you, everyone out there,
Thank you.
for listening, and we all hope you have a great day.